Howdy folks, and welcome back to World of Warships with Rear Admiral Jingles, and today's episode is once again sponsored by Audible. As usual, you can start listening with a free 30-day Audible trial and get full access to thousands and thousands of all-you-can-listen audiobooks, original entertainment and podcasts included in the Plus catalogue. Visit audible.com/jingles or text jingles to 500 500. Unfortunately, since we seem to have run out of Jim Hornfisher books to pimp, Jim, hurry up and finish your new book, I've had to cast my net slightly further afield this month. And so I'm going to recommend Sicily 43, The First Assault on Fortress Europe by James Holland. It's the story of Operation Husky, the Allied assault on Sicily on the 10th of July 1943, which at the time was the biggest amphibious invasion ever conducted anywhere, and would only be eclipsed by Operation Overlord in Normandy the following year in 1944. There are two reasons why I'm recommending James Holland's work. Well, actually, there are three. One, it's a fantastic audiobook. Two, James Holland, like Jim Hornfisher, before he was a historian, he was a writer. So he knows how to write, and this, unfortunately, is not a common skill amongst historians. A lot of historical documentaries can be very, very dry and tough to listen to or read. Not so when you're enjoying something written by James Holland. And the third and final reason, possibly the biggest one, is because it's narrated by none other than stand-up comic Al Murray. Yes, the famous pub landlord, who is also something of an amateur historian himself and has done quite a bit of work for the Tank Museum at Bovington. So, Sicily 43, written by James Holland, narrated by Al Murray, and you can get it with your first free credit if you take advantage of Audible's free 30-day trial. Just visit audible.com/jingles or text jingles to 500 500. Whichever book you happen to choose with your first free credit, whether that's Sicily 43 or not, I hope you enjoy it. And now, back to the battle. Don't worry, you haven't missed anything. I time these things expertly. I'm a professional, don't you know? So, here in the Japanese Tier 9 gunboat, the infamous Kitakaze, is Gulf. Welcome back, Dave. It's been a while. I can't pronounce that. I swear you lot choose these names deliberately just to watch me make a mess of them on YouTube. Anyway, Dave, welcome back. It has been a while. No, Akazuki, this is your big sister, the Kitakaze. Close, but not quite the same. Today's battle is going to get fairly emotional for young Dave at several points, and it's all pretty much down to the Deadeye skill, something that the battleships on his team tacitly even acknowledge in chat at around the midpoint of this match. I mean, you can already see that they're in no rush whatsoever to get forward. And in fact, just a brief look at the team list shows you exactly what kind of influence that Deadeye skill is having on team composition. Although we'll examine that in greater detail in a moment, because right now, Dave has an Akatsuki to kill. Although people keep telling me you don't pronounce the U, it's just Akatsuki. Now, I freely admit that I am no Japanese pronunciation expert, but I would argue that the correct way to pronounce the name of that destroyer is, in fact, properly buggered. There's the first kill, the first blood award. The emergency reserve talent just activated, so that's one extra charge on all consumables, and trust me, that's going to come in handy during this battle. And of course, because that talent just activated, we now also know that Dave is running Yamamoto Isoroku as the captain of this Kitakaze, and that is also going to come in very, very handy as well. You know how Dave stopped firing just a fraction of a second before he cleared line of sight to those two battleships around the corner of the island up ahead? And he did that because, with the Z-46 smoking up, nobody was spotting him. If he'd continued to shoot at that point, those two battleships would have seen him. As it was, he managed to get the torpedoes away, and is completely undetected. But have a look at the position of the rest of his team. I am actually quite impressed that the carrier, the Saipan, has moved right up to the mouth of the channel that runs through the two islands in the middle of the map. That's actually pretty impressive to see in an aircraft carrier, because it means he can cycle his aircraft a lot more aggressively. But what it also means, thanks to the fact that the rest of the team are hanging back as far as they are, is that we've got Dave right up front here, and the next closest ship to the rest of the enemy team is in fact the aircraft carrier. And that, well, I think it says more about the rest of the team than it does about their carrier. Ooh, Z-46 torpedoes. But nope, it's okay. Just ran out of range. Dave, meanwhile, has noticed the lack of aggression on behalf of the rest of the team and is questioning it in chat. And it's here where we receive a reply from the Colorado, which pretty clearly indicates that the commander skill rework in general, and the Deadeye skill in particular, has a lot to answer for. Tanking is not meta anymore. Well, to be fair to the Colorado, he's not wrong. He doesn't want any pesky enemy destroyers or any other kind of enemy ship getting spotted within his surface detection radius, then he'll lose 10% accuracy. And nobody wants that, right? Right. Meanwhile, the team's only radar, the Dmitry Donskoy, getting sick and tired of the Mayhan in particular not actually going into the cap circle and all the battleships to the rear, pussying around in case they get their pixels damaged, has taken it upon himself to try to steal the cap at Alpha. Unfortunately, he's in a Dmitry Donskoy, and so he gets deleted, more or less instantly. To be completely fair to that Mayhan, with an enemy Georgia as close as that lurking right around the corner of the island to the north, I wouldn't want to be hanging around either. So he starts beating a hasty retreat. The Colorado has actually moved up, but with the Frederick the Great and the friendly Georgia to the south running away in the other direction, he quickly realises that he's on a highway to nowhere as well and starts backing up into cover behind the nearest available island. Meanwhile, Dave, more or less completely alone, is not only dodging torpedoes from that Z-46, he's also fighting off 2 enemy battleships. Although a torpedo that had landed on the Leon earlier has persuaded him to seek cover behind the island. The enemy Colorado, however, is feeling a bit brave. Unfortunately for the rest of the team, they're about to lose 1 battleship over on the eastern flank. There he goes, to the enemy implacable aircraft carrier sinking the Sinop with a rocket attack. But relief is about to arrive from the most unlikely of sources, with the team now down by 2 kills and 3 caps. The enemy Akatsuki destroyer has decided that the best thing he can possibly do for his team right now is to torpedo and sink his team's Alaska. There it is. Thus levelling the playing field somewhat and robbing the enemy team of their only radar too, just in time for Dave to get the kill on the Leon. His torpedoes are back up, which could be very, very bad news for the Colorado. Although the Colorado is nose in to reduce the number of torpedoes that are likely to hit, it's going to take 2, and he gets 2, and there's kill number 3. And once again, with the destruction of the Colorado, undetected. Unfortunately, the team have just lost their California. Fortunately, however, over on the other side of the map, which has more or less completely collapsed, as would this side if Dave hadn't been here, the friendly Erland has just sunk the Akatsuki, who just sank the enemy Alaska. I'm not sure if that's a good thing or a bad thing. I mean, he appears to be more used to us alive on the enemy team than dead. But hey, a kill's a kill, and the team are now actually ahead on kills. Although they're still way behind on points because they only control the cap circle that they started this match with. Meanwhile, as Dave moves to consolidate the gains that they've just made over here on the western side of the map, I'd like to draw your attention once again back to the minimap. Specifically, once again, more Z-46 torpedoes. Specifically, once again, to the friendly carrier, the Saipan. Now, I was quick to praise this guy earlier for moving up to such an aggressive position from which to launch his attacks, and I maintain that that was a good move for him to make at the beginning of the match. However, once he arrived in that position, he seems to have turned off his minimap, because he's still in that position with the enemy team sweeping around from capture point Delta on the east, which means he's now within about 8 kilometers of, and in line of sight, of a Brindisi, Sinop, Iowa, and Lightning. Now, admittedly, the friendly Georgia had been given them a nice big fat juicy short-range broadside to shoot at as well, but, well, it's not often you even see an aircraft carrier, let alone get the opportunity to shoot at one. So the Saipan's dead too. And as quickly as that, they've lost their kill advantage. Dave, however, now has the opportunity, and there it is. He finally got rid of that Z-46, who has been nothing but a persistent pain in the arse since the beginning of this match, which means that Dave is not only capping, but the Georgia has just run out of friends. The Georgia, however, ain't stupid. He's turning to disengage. Dave is obviously smoked up because he doesn't want to be caught at this range from a Georgia's secondaries. The Georgia pulls in behind the island, which means that Dave is obviously not going to be able to torpedo him. The good news is that there is no longer anybody to interfere with Dave capping Point Alpha. The rest of Dave's team are all running this way as fast as their little legs will carry them. This may seem like good news, but it's not. They're not running this way out of any sudden newfound desire to actually start supporting Dave and closing with the enemy. They are in fact running this way to get away from the enemy team, who are sweeping around from the east. They're only coming this way because there's only one enemy ship up here for them to run away from, and he's running away himself. There are far, far more enemy ships sweeping around for the east for them to run away from. That's why they're suddenly heading in this direction. It's quite amusing, actually. You can rewind this battle and just watch the minimap, and you can see that the entire movement of all of those friendly ships to the south has been determined precisely upon who it was they were running away from at any given time. And of course, because they're now all running away from that blob of enemy ships to the southeast, there is absolutely nobody to prevent the enemy lightning from slipping undetected into Capture Circle Charlie, the only cap circle that the team have had since the beginning of the match, because it was given to them, they didn't have to take it, and the lightning is now taking that off them too. Although credit to the Erland, who is not running away and is in fact trying to sneak around to the rear of that blob of enemy ships. Dave, confident that the team are not in immediate danger of losing Capture Point A, and while waiting to see what happens with his torpedoes on the Georgia, I think he's probably going to hit with at least one, is pushing up into Capture Point Bravo. Meanwhile, down to the south, perhaps embarrassed by his performance thus far, and with the Mayhan refusing to do anything about it, has pushed forward into Capture Point Charlie, and he has forced the lightning out of there, just as Dave lands a single torpedo on the Georgia. Unfortunately, while he has succeeded temporarily, at least in forcing the lightning out of Capture Point Charlie, the Frederick the Great did so by exposing broadside to a Sinop and an Iowa at a range of about 5 kilometres. So he's dead too. Bloody hell, Jingles. First you criticise the battleships for staying too far back, and now you criticise them for going too far forward. They just can't win, can they? Yeah, I know. It's almost as if there's no happy middle ground that exists between those two extremes. The Frederick did force that lightning north into the channel, though. Dave's about halfway through capping, and there should be a lightning down there. He'd probably prefer not to get involved in a fair fight with the lightning while he's halfway through capping, but, well, he might not have any choice in the matter, so he turns away, points his gun. Where is he? He's not back in Charlie. He's got to be in this channel somewhere. Oh, there he is. Fire the frickin' lasers! Unfortunately, this is a fair fight. Or it was, until the lightning decided to slow and smoke up. Because going slow, with his engine disabled, means that Dave doesn't have to work too hard to figure out exactly where the lightning is. And the lightning, attempting to rely on stealth to keep him intact, is not firing back at Dave. And despite the fact that Dave is blazing away in open water, the Georgia was too far away to spot him, which meant that in order to stand any chance of winning this fight, and unfortunately he left it way too late, the lightning had to come out of his own smoke screen, which just meant that Dave could kill him all the faster. And that, with the Kraken Unleashed, is also the second wind talent, which provides a free heal and reduces the reload of these terrifying 100mm guns even faster. Dave now has a 1.5 second reload. Some torpedoes away, because there's a Brindisi coming back. The Georgia is still way too far away to be any immediate threat. But if the Brindisi spots him, the Georgia doesn't really have anything else to shoot at. Torpedoes away in the direction of the Georgia, just in case. First set of torpedoes already fired in the general direction of the approaching Brindisi. The Kitakazi only has one torpedo launcher, but it does have a torpedo reload booster. Long cooldown. But thanks to the second wind talent for getting the first blood award, he does have an extra charge of all of his consumables. And he's managed to flip the cap. So, despite being 200 points behind, the team are 1 kill up. And for the first time in this match, they actually have more capture points than the enemy team combined. Things are about to get a little sticky for young Dave, however, as he's now caught as the filling between a Georgia Brindisi sandwich. A lot of people would think, nah, screw that. Semi-armor piercing, 8-inch shells on one side, Georgia secondaries on the other. I'm out of here. Dave, however, is made of sterner stuff. 2 torpedo hits would have been enough to sink the Georgia, and he very, very nearly got them. But, well, nearly getting 2 torpedo hits is exactly the same as saying only getting 1 torpedo hit. And the Georgia has, of course, used his damage control, and he's starting to heal up. Dave's going to have to make a tough decision. Because if he starts shooting at the Georgia, he's not only going to start eating the Georgia's secondary batteries, which are still pretty nasty, even with the effective nerf of the commander skill rework, but he's also going to start eating 8-inch semi-armor piercing shells. Oof, there it is. From the Brindisi to the rear. But he did manage to get the Georgia. And with the penultimate charge of his smokescreen generator, he's no longer spotted. Dave, however, is not hanging around inside this smokescreen with his torpedoes and his torpedo reload booster on cooldown, waiting for that Brindisi to charge forward and catch him. And the Brindisi will have to charge forward if it wants to catch him, because Italian cruisers have no utility. They have no radar, they have no hydro. What they do have, however, are semi-armor piercing shells, which are absolutely terrifying to deal with if you're in a destroyer. What they do have, which the Brindisi has very wisely used, and it's worked, oh shit, and he missed, are spotting planes and catapult fighters. And since he's spotted anyway, well, Dave has absolutely nothing to lose by opening up on the Brindisi. Especially since now he is no longer spotted, since the Brindisi's catapult fighter is too far away to see him, and the Brindisi is now effectively firing blind as he tries to navigate around Dave's smokescreen, which is blocking a line of sight. He's managed to set a fire. The Brindisi's health is just melting away. There's another fire. And it's only now that the Brindisi finally sees him. Shots out. It is semi-armor piercing. It has missed again. There's the high caliber award. There's kill number 7. Okay, Dave. You can relax now, dude. I think that was a 50% hit point Brindisi Italian Tier 9 heavy cruiser. Dave only had 2,800 health at the beginning of that fight, and he only had that because of the second wind talent, which he got from the Kraken Unleashed kill on the Lightning. But with 2,800 health, he took on, in a gunfight, with no help from his torpedoes because they were on cooldown, a Tier 9 heavy cruiser on with semi-armor piercing shells at 50% health, and won. It's at this point where I'd once again like to direct your attention to the minimap where the Mayhan has failed once again to take a cap circle. There are, of course, at this point only 2 enemy ships remaining, the Implacable and the Sinop, which probably explains why the rest of Dave's team, with the exception of the Mayhan, who's fumbling his way back into that last enemy cap circle again, but this probably explains why the rest of Dave's team have suddenly put on their man pants and all overdosed on their brave pills. I am, however, very happy to report that the Mayhan does achieve his lifelong ambition to flip one of the capture points, although he did wait until the team were 200 points ahead anyway before he did it. And so everyone's favourite hero, Dave, in the Kitakazi, carrying the stupids. A carry of epic proportions, a team that were determined to run away from every enemy ship they could see, and somehow Dave still managed to drag them kicking and screaming over the finish line. Take care, folks, stay safe, and as always, I'll catch you next time.